Let's imagine you're in a relationship and it's of a traditional, committed relationship, two people, you're in a couple. There are many scientists who have pointed out that once you are in a couple, in many ways you are no longer an individual, you are no longer independent, you are interdependent. And so we get this thing called interdependence theory. This is a model of romantic relationships that suggests stability, not too much ups and downs, not too much, churning and chaos within the relationship. Stability is predicted by commitment. Commitment is like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm committed to you. You are my person. And that in turn is predicted by satisfaction and alternatives. And I'm definitely going to have to say some more things about some of these terms to clarify what I mean by them. And so this is also referred to as social exchange theory, which I have mentioned for other topics. But in this specific context, the basic idea is once you enter into a relationship, you're a couple. It's no longer I, it's we in some way. So let's talk about commitment. Commitment is the individual's decision to stay in a romantic relationship for the long term. So the idea with commitment is, okay, at the very least, you are my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my partner, perhaps your spouse, but the idea is with a commitment is that you intend for this to last for some period of time, maybe not forever, but for some period of time. Now, when we look at commitment, one of the things that's important, one of the variables that's important is satisfaction. So satisfaction is the individual's perception of whether the relationship is better or worse than average. So comparison is very important for satisfaction. You pay attention to other couples or couples on TV and stuff like that and be like, well, we don't have that, or, oh, it could be so much worse. Look at that couple. Oh, my partner doesn't do those things. And so when you are determining satisfaction, you do a lot of comparison. And one of the things is you have current outcomes. Current outcomes, when you calculate or compute current outcomes, you create a ratio of costs to rewards. Basically, do you have more rewards or costs in a relationship? Are you gaining more than you're losing from your relationship? And in many different ways, you can lose or gain from a relationship. There are things you get and things you have to give up when you're in a relationship with somebody. And then with comparison level, that's when you look at other people. So the abstract average relationship, which is going to be based on who you know, who you've seen, who you've observed. The abstract average relationship determines a good to bad, a decent good to bad or cost to benefit ratio. And so it's almost like a math formula in your head, like, okay, when do we get to the point where this is not worth it? That sort of thinking. And another important component is you consider alternatives. What does alternatives sound like? Could I do better? What about so-and-so at work? They're kind of cute. They seem into me. Maybe I could have a relationship with them and it would be better than what I have now. The sort of thinking that sometimes people engage in when they're thinking, what if? And so with alternatives, that's the number and quality of other relationship options, or at least relationship options you think you have. Because sometimes people think they have alternatives and they actually don't. They try to leave their partner for another one and the other one's like, whoa, I did not open that door. I did not say we were going to be a couple. All right. But, perceived options. What would happen if you ended the current relationship? If you ended the current relationship, do you have something better waiting for you or potentially waiting for you? And then we have another term, comparison level of alternatives. The comparison level of alternatives is a comparison of the current relationship to the next best relationship you think you could be in, real or imagined, right? So the comparison level of alternatives is basically like, okay, the best I could do, how does this compare? And then sometimes it's all about thinking how bad things could be. So you could also have derogation of alternatives. Derogation is like you're putting stuff down. So people who are highly committed, they might engage in derogation of alternatives, like, look, my alternatives are awful. Clearly I have it better where I am. So you tell yourself that the alternatives are not that great, and avoiding temptation. Like, yeah, I could try with that cute person at work, but there's no way they're as good as the part. Ran out of recording space again. I wonder how that happened. And so you're with derogation of alternatives, you're considering your alternatives and thinking, I bet it wouldn't be so great. They're not so great. They're not better than what I have. All right. Now, another term. There are a lot of terms in here, a lot of things to consider. I mean, they're not difficult concepts, but a lot of specific labels for these fairly straightforward, simple concepts. All right. So investments. What are investments? You invest in relationships. You invest not just money, but time and energy into relationships. And we like to get something out of our investments. So sometimes one issue with staying in a relationship is you don't want to give up on your investment or investments. And so this is the amount of time, energy, and resources put into the relationship that would be lost if you ended it, if you gave up, if you broke up. And so the investment model combines all three predictors of commitment. So you've got satisfaction, alternatives, and your investments. All right. And so you consider all of these together to try to figure out, okay, are we good? All right. You know, am I satisfied? Could I do better? And what have I put into this? Am I getting anything back? You know, do I want to give up on that? You know, when you've spent a lot of time with a person, you know, if you've been together, let's say you've been together for 2 years, even if you start noticing some problems, it's very difficult to start over after 2 years, to say, okay, that 2 years of my life, I'm not going to get that back. Sometimes there is that motivation to make it work because you don't want to give up. You don't want to make your investments not be worth it, not leading to something greater or long term. All right. So another thing with all right, so another thing that we will discuss regarding attraction are some sex, gender, and sexual identity issues.